Well, thank you for joining us once again for another week in our morning time in the Word in the book of Ephesians. And right now we're looking this week and next at the armor of God, this wonderful, magnificent section on how to resist the evil forces that we are in combat with. In chapter 6 of Ephesians, verse 10, it says, "Finally be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you may be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places." And we've looked at those verses last week. But this, we pick up now in verse 13. "Therefore take up the full armor of God, so that you may be able to resist in the evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm." So the therefore tells us we're on a great spiritual battle, and the only way to overcome, or the only way to be victorious in this battle, is to put on the full armor of God. Sometimes we think of this armor in such a way that it's almost like a children's story. We see the flannel graph, we see the videos and so forth. But this is very serious stuff, and we want to take a close look at this armor of God that the Lord has given us to resist and to protect us in times of great spiritual struggle. So therefore, he says in verse 13, take up the full armor of God, not pieces of it. He's going to give us 6 different pieces of armor. Every one is essential. If you take up just 3 or 4 pieces and not the others, the Satan and his forces will know where you're vulnerable, and they'll take advantage of that. So you need the full or the whole armor of God, so that you may be able to resist in the evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm. 3 different times in these verses, he tells us, going back to verse 11 and going through verse 14, to stand firm. Here's how you stand firm. Here's how you do not get knocked over by the forces of evil, overrun by them. Here is how we overcome them. So we are to stand firm. And he says, so that you may be able to resist in the evil day. So resistance is what he's talking about right here, to be able to stand against these forces. There's 2 other passages in the New Testament that talk about the same thing, and we want to look at those other 2 very quickly. One is found in James chapter 4 and verse 7. "Submit therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." So these are very quick summaries. If we resist the devil, we're promised he will flee from you. And then if we go over to a parallel passage in 1 Peter chapter 5, it tells us here to be sober spirit, be of sober spirit, be on the alert, for your adversary the devil prowls about like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Then he says this, "But resist him firm in your faith." So these 2 passages give us a very quick summary that we are facing a powerful demonic enemy, and if we resist him, he will flee from us and give us a reprieve. When we go back to Ephesians chapter 6 that we're looking at now, however, and we look at this passage of Scripture, we find a fuller picture, a more robust understanding of what it means to resist. The message is basically the same. If we are going to be able to resist the devil, as we should, he will flee from us. He will give us a reprieve. He'll come back. He did that to the Lord himself. Remember in Luke chapter 4, the devil came to tempt Jesus, and he left after Jesus resisted him for a time, but he came back periodically throughout the lifetime of Jesus, and especially in the Garden of Gethsemane and at the cross. And so he's going to keep coming back, but we're to have the same weapons each time, the armor of God that enables us to resist the onslaughts of the devil. By doing this, then we are able to stand firm. Now, one of the things I would mention before we leave this passage this morning is the modern-day spiritual warfare movement that you may have heard of. Is a movement that talks about how we aggressively chase the devil, defeat the devil, run the devil out of town, or whatever else that movement wants to teach us. And 95% of what is in that movement is not biblical. It is experiential, it's imaginative, it is not found in Scripture. So if we want to know what we are to do with the devil, we need to go back to the Bible and see what it says. And the New Testament tells us consistently in all 3 places where it tells us how to handle him. We are to resist him, not chase him, not be aggressive. We are to resist him. And when we do, he flees. But now Paul wants to go on and talk about how we actually go about doing that in putting on the full armor of God. So tomorrow we'll begin to look at the first piece of that armor, and then we'll move on down the line as the days go by. We'll see you tomorrow. You have a wonderful day in the Lord.